afternoon, everyone. I see we have our attendees starting to join. Welcome to the What Is It Like to Do Gilman session. Thank you so much for joining us as part of the We Represent conference. I'm Kat, I'm the moderator. I am so excited to see you all joining. We're going to give people another minute or two just to make sure everyone's got a chance to grab some water, check on a squirrely pet in my case, make sure that everything's good before we get started. But again, this is the What Is It Like to Do Gilman session. So we're going to give everyone just a minute more to join, but thank you again for joining us on this lovely, lovely Thursday afternoon. All right, looks like our participant numbers are holding pretty steady, so we'll go ahead and get started. If you are just joining us, welcome. It is great to have you on this Thursday afternoon, and welcome to the What Is It Like to Do Gilman session. I am Kat. I will be moderating this session. I use she and her pronouns, and I am so excited to be spending this time with you. A couple of just quick notes before we get started. If you have questions while our panelists are sharing, please add those to the question and answer option down at the bottom of the Zoom window. Once we get through the set questions for this session, we will get to as many of those as we can. We are limited on time because there are so many other great sessions to check out today, but we'll get to as many questions as we can. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. Jeydelyn, would you get us started?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kat. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeydelyn Martinez. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm really happy to be here today. I was awarded the Gilman Scholarship in 2015 to study abroad in Madrid, Spain, and was really influenced by that because I ended up going back to Spain for 3 more years to teach ESL. So it was a really transformative experience. Currently, I'm working at my alma mater, Marquette University, for a trio program called Student Support Services as an office associate. And I'm also serving as a Gilman Alumni Ambassador this year. And I'm a proud Afro-Boricua first-generation student. So super happy again to be here and talk about my Gilman experience.
And thank you, Jeydelyn. We are very excited to have you. For our next panelist, Jessica, would you share a bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jessica Mendez. I go pronouns are she, her. I was awarded a Gilman in 2016 to South Korea. And currently I am a graduate student at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in their Sustainable Peace Building program. Previously, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Mongolia. And I also identify as a first-generation college student, as multiracial, and yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Wonderful, thank you, Jessica. And then for our third panelist, Daniel, would you share a bit about yourself?
Hi, can you hear me okay? A bit, okay. Thank you, everyone. I apologize. My name is Daniel Oliveiro. My pronouns are he, him, his. I got the Gilman Scholarship back in 2018 to study abroad in Taipei, Taiwan. I did a STEM program abroad. I did pharmaceutical chemistry. And currently I am a PharmD student at UCSF. And I also am involved in some clinical research with pediatric delirium over here. And a little bit about myself. I'm a first generation Brazilian American. I grew up in California, lived in Brazil for a while. I speak Portuguese and Spanish as well. So it's great to be here with you all and talk about our experiences abroad.
Thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to get to spend time with the three of you and hear about your awesome experiences. So let's get started. You all mentioned a little bit about when this process started for you, but if you wouldn't mind delving in a little bit more to when you decided to apply for the Gilman program, and why did you go with Gilman? Jeydelyn, would you start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I knew going into university I wanted to study abroad, but as a low-income student, I didn't really know how that was going to be feasible for me. And I was really heavily involved on campus as well as an RA. I was in a lot of student orgs, really immersed. And as time went on and on, I realized I was running out of time to study abroad. And I started to doubt if it could happen. And it wasn't until my junior year I got chosen to go on a trip to San Salvador as part of a delegation to commemorate the UCA martyrs and learn about liberation theology a little bit more. I went to a Jesuit institution that I realized that I could have international opportunities and I could go for them and that I was worthy. And so shortly after that trip, I went straight to the Office of International Education at my alma mater and told them, I know it's late in the game. I know I'm a senior next year, but this really has to happen for me. What options do I have? And they told me I'd be a perfect candidate for the Gilman. And up until that point, I didn't know what the Gilman was. And so my study abroad advisor really walked me through it and kind of told me how to apply and that she would be there to support me and give me the tools to be successful in the application process. So that's how I got introduced to Gilman and how I got to that point.
Awesome. Thank you. Jessica, what about your experience? What did that look like when you started this process, and why did you choose Gilman?
Sure. So I had a similar experience where I didn't think much about study abroad, maybe until my sophomore year when I saw my other classmates going. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that we could travel outside the country and experience all these great things and go somewhere else. So for me, I was my junior year as well. So I actually went to study abroad my fall semester, junior year. And so the semester and summer before that, I believe I was applying. And I went to Loyola Chicago, also a Jesuit institution. They had a pretty robust fellowship office where they had people dedicated to helping students applying to fellowships and scholarships. So I bugged them quite a bit and had them help me with my essays and application. And the reason I applied for Gilman was because I wanted to go to Korea, but my university didn't have any partnerships with any universities there. So I had to look for funding elsewhere. And I was going through USAC, I think University Study Abroad Consortium. And they had a pretty reasonable tuition rate. And they also had their own scholarship, which I also applied to and received. But the Gilman, gave quite a bit, I think around $5,000. So for me, it made study abroad not only feasible, but actually profitable for me in the end, compared to staying in Chicago and going to Loyola. So that was my experience.
Thank you, Jessica. And then Daniel, how about you? What did your experience look like?
Sure, Kat. So for me, I had a bit of a different trajectory. So I went to University of California, Davis, here in California. And since freshman year for the pharmaceutical chemistry major, they always advertised pharmaceutical chemistry in Taipei. So since my freshman year, I was exposed to that possibility. And ever since a freshman, I was like, I think I'm gonna do it. So I ended up applying to the study abroad program and then hearing about the Gilman. So I kind of did it in a leap of faith. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay for this, but I think it's something that I just resonate with. And then my study abroad advisor told me about the Gilman, and she also told me of another scholarship as well. But for the Gilman, I was looking at the selection process, and I just resonated kind of with the idea of serving individuals when you come back to the US and representing, the US abroad. I was really passionate about doing that. So that was a bit of my application process. And then I applied in the October cycle. So during my junior year of undergrad, as I was starting my upper division coursework, I took the time to apply. And I think by Thanksgiving, I received the news. So I was really happy. And also having family from Brazil, I I'm the opposite of a lot of people. I like humid weather and stuff like that. So when I heard that Taiwan was like kind of tropical, I was just so excited to go, and it was a great experience.
Thank you, Daniel. It's great to hear about the way that Gilman resonates with people, that it gets people excited. So you all mentioned a little bit about who came and was part of the story of your application. Specifically, Jessica, you mentioned the office on campus dedicated to working with fellowships and scholarships. Was that the group that really helped you with the application? And were there other people that came alongside and supported you in that process?
Yes, so it was that office. I didn't know the person very well that helped me. It was more of like I knew their name and their email address, and they told me very, very straightforwardly, change this, change that, you need this and this. But I also had a counselor who was in a TRIO program, because I was in a TRIO program at Loyola. So he was my counselor throughout, I think for 3 years, and it changed, but he was someone that I trusted more. And he was the one that I also went to ask his opinion on, I guess, more of the meat and bones, like did it really resonate with what I believed in and wanted to get out of the experience? So he helped me more with the meaning behind the words, while the fellowship office, I think, just gave me the more straightforward advice of getting the point across and maybe wording.
Great. Daniel, you also talked a little bit about working with your study abroad advisor to get the process started. Were there other people who came alongside and supported you in your application process?
Definitely the encouragement from family members. As part of the Gilman application, I believe I had to be we have to be medically cleared. So I talked with like the student counseling center and, the student health center, and they were more than happy to provide me with like the information I needed. And fun fact too is I worked with a Fulbright advisor who like offered to help me with like the Gilman Scholarship. So those were some of the individuals who helped me. And my senior year, when I came back from Gilman, I actually helped people with their essays at the tutoring center. So that's always a place you can go to, your school's tutoring center as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Great use of resources and finding those pieces that can really help you out there. Great to hear the support system that comes in and kind of joins in with this process. So thinking about the process of the application, and of course, looking at what you begin with is often very, very different from where you end. So Jeydelyn, would you tell us a little bit about what your first draft looked like, and then what your process looked like of making it to that final draft?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one suggestion I can give right off the bat is to start early. So I had time with me because there are multiple components to the application process. So you just want to make sure that you get them all done. But I would say the heart of the application, of the Gilman application, are the essays. And so that's where I really sought a lot of support. Like I mentioned before, my study abroad advisor was very helpful and kind of, had experience with the Gilman and knew what they were looking for, and to kind of tailor it to that, but to also have my voice shine and my narrative shine. And one of the other ways I did that was taking my drafts to the writing center at my university. And they were so helpful, so patient, and just, kind of allowing me to read it out loud and say how I felt about that. What's a sentence that we can make stand out to engage the reader, right? And bring them in and call them into what you're telling them, why you want to go abroad, and what impact it'll have on you. I also did more research as I was kind of tailoring these essays and answering all the questions, because we need to answer all the questions that the Gilman asks you. Researching my host institution and seeing what they offered. I selected another Jesuit institution in Madrid, and I talked about those values that my alma mater had, and I saw reflected in this institution, and I saw student organizations that I wanted to be involved in, so I wrote about it. I saw that there was a service opportunity to teach ESL, and so I wrote about it, and I ended up doing it. And another thing, how it evolved is with my study abroad advisor. She told me to be very specific about my follow-on service project, to think about the communities and the organizations I was already a part of at Marquette and in the Malka community where I'm from, and see how I could integrate myself and do workshops or go to a study abroad fair or things like that. And so that specificity really got better as I went from first to final and everything in between.
So with quite a few steps to the process, a lot of research, a lot of seeking support and finding all of those people that are going to come alongside and help, it takes a while. Daniel, do you have an idea of about how long you spent on your application?
Sure. So for me, in undergrad, I had about like 15 hours per week of class time. So I had a lot of time outside of class. I know everyone's schedule is a bit different, but for me, I spent about 2 weekends from like Thursday to Saturday working on my application. And usually when we survey students, they take about 5 to 10 hours to complete the essays and get all your transcripts in, do any contacting you need to do with your financial aid advisor and your study abroad advisor. For me, it was a process of about 2 weeks, and I treated it as like a little checklist. Like I would give myself rewards, like, okay, I'm going to read my first paragraph, make sure it's okay. Or I'm going to do speed writing and I'm just going to put something on paper and then I'll come back and edit it. It was a fun process, but definitely I started early. I submitted the application before the deadline. But it took me, I would say about two weekends, so maybe 6 days of working on the application.
Jessica, what about you? How long was your process?
It was quite a while ago, so I can't be as exact as Daniel, but I do remember starting it as soon as I could, because I'm one of those people who is very anxious about missing deadlines. And I like to ask people for their feedback. And also when it comes to like getting transcripts and making sure study abroad approves everything, I remember starting really early. And usually I start early, but then I just kind of drag it out. I've given myself some time to change my essays after I let it like ruminate and sit for a while. So I think I potentially even started in January when I had time to kind of plan my my school year. So earlier the better.
That definitely seems to be the theme, to get started early. So definitely a great tip there. Daniel, are there other tips that you would give for people who are starting off in the process, things to keep in mind as you start at the very beginning?
Sure. I want to reiterate what Jeydelyn and Jessica said, starting early. I completely agree with Jeydelyn as well, being specific on your essays about, why you want to go abroad and utilizing the connections you already have for your service project. So for me, I did it with my high school. To add on some tips, I would say that for your essays, there are usually 3 domains, and I just talked about this in the previous Gilman nuts and bolts, but it basically encompasses your personal, your academic, and your professional lives. That's a big theme in the essays, and how I encourage individuals to approach that is to think about your goals and why you have those goals, because the Gilman team also wants to understand how you'll weave in your goal into your study abroad experience and your careers. So summing it all up, I would say, like, be your authentic self, show a story of like why you want to study abroad and what you can learn from it, and also offer to the abroad community as well.
Thank you, Daniel. So, of course, this process takes quite a bit of time, as we've discussed, and you definitely want to get started early, but there might have been competing priorities. Jeydelyn, were you looking at other opportunities while you were looking at Gilman?
Yes, but they were actually domestic, but still like internationally focused. So my university has a floor in an apartment called Global Village, and students from abroad come to live there. And they have students who are ambassadors, who are their roommates. And so I was applying for the position who would oversee that floor, because irregardless of if I would get the opportunity to study abroad, that exchange, that culture exchange, an international experience is very important to me. And I firmly believe you can do that locally as well. And so I was applying for that opportunity. And I will say, after I returned from the Gilman, I did apply for the Fulbright. And even though I didn't receive it, I'm glad that I did it. And I also think I felt empowered by receiving the Gilman to apply for another exchange program. And I think I will do so again in the future. So definitely keep your, apply to as many things as you want. Go for it, you're worthy of it.
Thank you, Jeydelyn. Jessica, what about you? Were you looking at other opportunities at the same time?
Yeah, so I mentioned USAC, so University Study Abroad Consortium. So they're a program or a consortium that opens up study abroad opportunities for students regardless of what university you currently go to. Like I mentioned, I wanted to go to Korea, but Loyola had no connection. So I applied first for Yonsei, which is like one of the top universities in Korea, but supposedly I started too late because people beat me to that. And I was waitlisted, and I really wanted to go to Korea, so I changed my choice. I went to a different university, smaller, less well-known, but still, I think the opportunity is still with going to the country and not so much on the school, since the international side of it might differ versus the Korean students. It's probably really rigorous for them, maybe not so for international students. So I went with USAC, and like I mentioned, they did have an additional $2,000 scholarship, which I also applied to and received. So that was the one that I recommend too, if anyone doesn't have any connections with their university.
Wonderful, thank you. Jeydelyn, you mentioned in a previous conversation that you did a follow-on project. Would you share a little bit with us about what that experience was like, what you did, and how it went?
Definitely, thanks, Kat. So a requirement of the Gilman when you return, if you're awarded, is to do a follow-on service project within your first 6 months of arrival. And what that looks like is basically promoting the Gilman Scholarship and also international exchange, international education. And so again, I encouraged by my study abroad advisor to kind of be very specific about who I was going to speak with when I returned. And I really thought about residence life, as I was an RA for 2 years, that I could tap into that network and talk to the students. And my alma mater has a floor that's all Spanish speaking. And so I went to that floor and I presented. I also volunteered for the study abroad office to be a study abroad ambassador. And not only did I get to go to the fairs and things, but I also got to mentor students who were applying and mentor students who were taking off to Spain and kind of give them tips and reminisce about my time there as well. So it was really nice. So I really just tapped into what I was already involved in and how I could reach out to them and extend a workshop or extend a presentation. So yeah, that's some of the ways that I did that.
Very cool, thank you. We talked a little bit about tips. We've put a lot of emphasis on getting an early start, but are there any other tips or tricks that you would like to share with those who are interested in starting this process, be it from the very beginning, at any point through your application process? What are some things that people should know before they get started? And Jeydelyn, do you want to start us off on that question?
Sure. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll get a minute. I was thinking about it. No worries. So I think tips I would have, I guess so I had a bit of a hiccup. I originally wanted to go to a Spanish university, but because I was a senior, that didn't work out for me. And I wanted to graduate at time. I could not afford to stay an extra semester. And so I had to go back into my application and change that. But the Gilman was very understanding and very helpful. And again, I turned to the Office of International Education at my alma mater to help me with that. But in the end, it worked out because I felt like the host institution I ultimately went to, St. Louis University, Madrid, really aligned with what I wanted and needed in the course, not only the courses I needed, but also like service. We had service learning. I volunteered as an ESL educator. So I guess that tip I would give is just to make sure that, you know, it fits your requirements, right? And it fits the requirements of the Gilman as well. And probably just, again, having people read over your essays. And then the last thing I'll say is just knowing that, like, I knew it a little bit, but I don't think I realized it until I came back, that the Gilman Scholarship isn't just a one-time opportunity, it's a program. And so you're gonna have access to this program for the rest of your life. And it's so many good opportunities in networking and professional development. And so I think that, don't think of it as a one-time thing. It's going to impact you for a very long time. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jeydelyn, and we will give you a break. Thank you for speaking so much all at once. Daniel, what about you? You talked about some tips earlier, but are there other points that you would add that people ought to know before they get started?
Yeah, I would say similarity to Jeydelyn. I think being underrepresented students, you know, whether it can be in any way, whether it's, you know, where you live or what school you go to, you might feel like imposter syndrome, you know, or the idea that like, oh, like, why should I even apply? Or like, I can't get this. You know, the Gilman doesn't have a minimum GPA. They really want to get to know you. Like, we're on your side. We're trying to help you go abroad. And the community as well, like, you know, Jeydelyn talked about Fulbright. I also applied to Fulbright and I didn't get it. But for me, I was proud of getting the Gilman. So I think just recognizing that there are other people who can relate to you, you know, that would be one thing that would give me some morale to push me through the application process. And then similarly to what was said before, you know, the Gilman, it's fun to study abroad. Like, I studied abroad for 8 weeks and I had class like once a day or once a week. So it was a lot of traveling, but I really was looking long-term, like, how is this going to be a formative experience for my career? And it continues to show up in so many ways, whether it's like cultural sensitivity or me having a letter of recommendation from my PI, you know, the scientists I worked with down there. So Gilman has been such a blessing. And then Jeydelyn and I, we also give back through the Alumni Ambassador Program as well. So I wish I would have known that this opportunity, like, I am worthy, you know, of like applying to this, and I hope you are too. So.
Thank you, Daniel. Jessica, what about you? What tips and points should people know?
So something I was thinking about was one, like, there's no way for Gilman to really, like, I don't know if they checked up on you, Jeydelyn and Daniel, but when I was in Korea, like, no one checked in on me, like, hey, are you serving, like, doing volunteer service like you said you would, or blah, blah, blah. Like, so if things don't work out, it's okay. Like, in your essay, you do have these aspirations, but if somehow it doesn't work out, it's like they won't check up on you, you won't be docked for it. So maybe keep that in mind. You don't have to feel too nervous about how your plans will change. Because even when I applied originally, I think I had to change my university because I wanted to go to Yonsei, but I ended up going to a different university. So like, that's something that I was really stressing out about, like mostly the university thing. And then when I was abroad, like, oh no, it's hard for me to find these volunteer opportunities, or I'm really busy with this and that. I think when you're abroad, it's not so much about going to class and learning these things. It's like about learning how to be in a different place and get to know people around you. So like the Korean students, but also the other students from abroad. Like, I made so many friends from Europe that I never thought I would make going to Korea. So that's something I wish I had known. And of course, like the other panelists both mentioned, opened the door to knowing about all the other State Department opportunities and other ways that you can go abroad with the United States funding pretty much everything, with Peace Corps, with Fulbright, Critical Language Scholarship. Like, there's so many opportunities.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you all. So that ends kind of the questions that we wanted to get started with and have our panelists take a look at. I'm going to give them a minute to take a deep breath and get some water before I start asking more questions. But audience members, if there are questions that you have about what it's like to do a Gilman or things that we've discussed here in the last 30 minutes, please put those in the questions and answers section. There's a little Q&A option down at the bottom of your Zoom window. So please chat your questions there about anything that we've discussed, or like I said, just generally what it's like to be part of the program. We're going to give our panelists just a moment before I get them all to start talking again, because it has been a pleasure to get to hear about your experiences and learn from the three of you, so thank you. But again, audience members, if you have questions, just chat them in. So I'll have those up here. But to start with, I would love to know, Daniel, you mentioned being part of the alumni network and getting to be part of programming even after returning. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like?
I'd be happy to. There are so many things. I'll touch on a couple. So we have like a LinkedIn page. We have LinkedIn page, we have Facebook, Instagram, a lot of social media, but we also have the Gilman Scholar Network, which is our own platform where you can post jobs, you can network with individuals, filter by location, by like what they work in as well. Those are great resources. We also host networking events, career building opportunities as well. Before pandemic, I actually went to Oregon because the Gilman had a career readiness seminar as well. So I spent a day there. So there are a lot of these events going on, and we've transitioned to virtual. You know, we just hosted a cybersecurity, kind of topic, which I find really interesting. And I would echo that. I mean, you get to know about so many other scholarships and programs. I've known Gilmans who then do the Fulbright, who do the Rango Fellowship, other programs as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Jeydelyn, are you also part of the alumni team working on post-Gilman activities?
Yes, I am. Did you want me to speak on what?
If you would like to share, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, well, Daniel did a great job saying a lot of the benefits. Another benefit, I think, is being part of conferences like we represent, being able to network with higher education professionals and students across the country. And I think that's been the blessing in all of this being on virtual, is that you're able to kind of extend yourself and get to meet people from across the country and talk about your experience and motivate them. So that's been really nice for me to do. Also, I know last year, Gilman offered funding to do a course that you could get certification in to kind of improve and expand in your professional development, or maybe a skill you wanted to refine or learn more about. So there was a fund for that. So there's just these opportunities that come up, and they really try to keep you connected and keep you engaged. They don't just forget about you. So it's been really nice. And again, it's been nice to be an alumni ambassador and get to meet the other ambassadors and hear their stories. And, sometimes, your family gets tired of hearing you talk about your study abroad and your experience. So it's nice to be with people who are like, yeah, I remember my time, and kind of just exchange and be happy for one another. Like, if they get the Wrangle, if they get a Fulbright, or just pursuing graduate school as well. So it's been very nice.
Sounds fantastic. Jessica, you mentioned that learning about the Gilman kind of opened up this whole world of opportunities to go abroad and to find these other organizations like the Peace Corps that allow you to continue to experience the world and to give back. Are there any of those opportunities that you get particularly excited about?
I guess Peace Corps. I really enjoyed my time in Peace Corps. I was in Mongolia, so between China and Russia. So, and during that time, I actually met 5 or 6 Fulbright people who got Fulbright. So it was interesting. Just as a side note, like it's very different experiences. If anyone's interested in just going abroad and knowing what it's like, potentially studying or teaching English, Fulbright's really great for that. But Peace Corps, if you really want to live in like the rural countryside areas and like live like how those people live, like I had no running water. I had to go to an outhouse. I taught in a school with 200 students in a village of 2,000. And you have the opportunity to apply for grants during that time too, to do cool summer camps and projects. But 2 very different experiences. I also applied for Fulbright for Korea, and I received it, or was offered it, but I decided to decline in order to go to Peace Corps because I had my motivation of helping people in a more like direct way. Teaching English in South Korea I think is great, but also it's a very industrialized country. They already have a lot of English teachers. So I feel like Mongolia was a place where I could be more beneficial, more helpful.
Thank you for sharing about that opportunity. Would you like to continue, Jessica, with any thoughts on how you engaged with locals while doing Gilman?
Okay, sure. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if I should respond to that right away. So
go right ahead.
Yeah, so actually when I was in Korea, I got to live right by Seoul Station. So I had to live, it was a situation. The university didn't have enough housing, so they put us somewhere else. So they decided who I should live with. So luckily it was another American and also a French person. So we became really close. It was really great. And then a lot of other foreign students lived in that building. Of course I had class projects with English speaking Korean people or other students who were studying abroad. But I guess the main thing that I did, I actually joined an ultimate Frisbee team in Seoul, South Korea. So this team was comprised of a lot of foreigners, but also a handful of Korean people. So we did a practice together by the Han River. We went to different cities to do tournaments. So that was a good way I connected with more foreigners, but also a lot of Korean people who liked ultimate, and we could communicate in English because my Korean was not up to par. So that was a good way for me to get to know different people.
Jeydelyn, what about you? How did you interact with locals?
Yeah, multiple ways. I think I had to make an extra effort because I was at an American institution in Madrid, and so there was a lot of Americans at my school. And so I remember there was like a bulletin board with young students, young locals in the area who wanted to do language exchange. And so I ended up meeting 3 people who I still am in contact with today, and that was in 2015. So that was a really nice way. I also, I mentioned I was an ESL teacher and I volunteered at my host institution. So I was teaching advanced English, and that was just a very cool experience and perspective. And they would invite myself and the other co-teacher, who was a very close friend of mine, out to get a drink and out to get a coffee and just talk. And that was really nice. Other ways I did that was just kind of being aware of what was going on in the city. Madrid is beautiful in the sense that it's very international, but it's also very Spanish. So you get the best of both worlds. You get to meet locals, but you also get to meet people from all around the world. And I think it's just saying yes to things. Like you're already saying yes to going abroad, and that's one step outside of your comfort zone. But when people invite you, of course, take your safety into consideration. But when people invite you, right, and it's safe and it seems like fun, try not to second guess yourself or feel insecure or feel like you don't belong there, or that it will be this or that. Keep an open mind, and you never know who you're going to meet. On those times that I said yes, I have, again, close friends that I still speak with to this day, every month from around the world. And that's because I opened myself up and I said, yes, I'm going to put myself out there. So I think that's a great way to meet locals and to meet people from all around the world.
Love that. Say yes. Daniel, what about you? How did you interact with locals?
Yeah, so I'll preface the question by also, recognizing that everyone's experience is different. So for me, I went to a research institute. It wasn't really even an undergraduate school. We had a lot of PhD candidates from other countries. And logistically, how did I actually do it? Because I didn't speak Mandarin, so I used Google Translate a lot. And Google Translate actually has a feature like a camera, right? Because I didn't know how to type some of the characters in Mandarin. So it was 3 months of my life just using Google Translate for everything. I learned a couple of words as well. And through my lab, I met my mentor in my lab, he introduced me to his group of friends, and they were all from India. And then one of them just like Jeydelyn as well said, like they would invite me to like go out, and I would always be a little bit hesitant because I'm more of like a shy person, reserved. But the times that we did go out, I learned about like, Indian culture while I was in Taiwan. So it was an interesting experience. And then they also introduced me to an American missionary family. So it was interesting because I got to learn from their experience of what it's like to live in Taiwan. They like completely integrated into the culture. And it was cool because when I was not with my classmates, I would get a chance to like have kind of those parent figures because they were like an older couple. So that was it. And I was going to say another thing too. It was, one time I went to their 7-Elevens because their 7-Elevens are really upscale. Like you can get like organic meals for like $2, And then this guy saw me and he was like, "Oh, what are you doing here in Taiwan?" And I was like, "Oh, we're with UC Davis." And he's like, "Oh, I went to UC Davis." So he was a study abroad student at my school, and I was a study abroad student at his school. And then he treated us out to like local Taiwanese restaurants. So it was all those small opportunities.
Well, thank you all. Have one more question to just check in. But as a reminder, we've got about 16 minutes before the next session starts. So this will probably be our last question. But don't forget, audience members, that there will be a survey to fill out when you exit the Zoom. So please fill that out. And every time you fill out a survey, you get entered for the raffle. So definite reason to check it out there. But now that we have talked about these amazing places that you all spent time as part of your program, as part of your experience abroad, have you been back? And if you have or haven't, would you go back naturally when, this whole pandemic thing is over and it's safe to do so? But would you head back? Oh, and I've just been corrected. We've only got 5 minutes left, but we'll leave that open to you.
I can start off. So I think I mentioned that I did return because I felt like my time in Spain wasn't finished. And before I left my study abroad, I went to the Career Services Center at the host institution and asked them what opportunities were available to me to come back to Spain beyond being a student. And the career services person told me to apply to different teaching programs, one of them being through the Spanish ministry, Auxiliares de Conversación. And so I did that program for about 3 years, and I moved every single time because I wanted to take advantage of being there. And so I was in Valladolid, I was in Madrid again, and then I ended in Malaga, and met really great people again from those experiences. So yes, and would I go back again? Yes, I would.
Daniel, what about you?
So it's been about 3 years, and I would love to go back. I've not gone back. Maybe I can win another award and go back. Because right now I'm a grad student, so it's a little tough. But I would love to be back. Some of the friends I've made there, they've offered, their homestay for me as well. And I also don't think my time with Taiwan is done. I think it'll come back in the future.
Jessica, how about you?
I have gone back to Korea, mostly because I have family there. When I was in Peace Corps, Mongolia, I visited for a summer with my mom and my sister, saw my grandparents and such. And I would go again, of course, to visit family. But when I was there in Korea during my Gilman, it was a time for me trying to connect to my mom's heritage and culture. But it was kind of an awakening, like, I'm not going to fit in because of how I look, but also I can't speak Korean, and it's a different mentality. So at the same time, it kind of dampened my desire to be Korean or fit in. I kind of accepted it that this wouldn't happen. I still love it. I would love to go back, but now it's not a priority since I had that experience. And I love to also visit other countries and go to other places to see other things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all, Jeydelyn, Jessica, and Daniel, for taking the time to join us today to tell us about your experience from application to going abroad. And hopefully we're all traveling again in the near future. I'm certainly hoping to. But thank you so much for your time, for your passion, and for sharing about your experience. It has been a pleasure to get to speak with you. Thank you for sharing with the We Represent conference as well as with our attendees. So we are right at the end of our time. Don't forget, we've got other sessions coming up this afternoon. So more to learn, more to discover, more amazing experiences to hear about. And don't forget, attendees, that survey is going to pop up when you leave the Zoom. Please make sure that you fill it out. But it has been wonderful to get to spend time with you all. Thank you so, so much. And I hope that our paths cross again soon.